Good evening. My name is Annette Mills, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Corvallis, I'm happy to welcome you here this evening. Thank you for joining us for tonight's program. I'd like to begin by recognizing our elected officials who are here this evening. Charlyn Ellis is the Ward 5 City Councilor. Charlyn, where are you? I know you're here. There she is. Thank you. Our agenda for tonight is this. We'll start with a brief overview of the league and our theme for the year. And then we'll hear from a panel of community members who will share their experiences of democracy. After that, we'll do some brief networking, followed by our keynote presentation by Dr. Mary Folo. And then it'll be your turn for some small group discussion. And finally, we will have a call to action. The purpose of tonight's program is to define democracy, to explore risks to our democracy and to discuss how we might respond both individually and together. So, what is the League? When most people hear the name League of Women Voters, they think of voter registration and candidates forum. And for more than 100 years, the League has been the premier grassroots organization for voter education, but that is certainly not all that we do. The League is a nonpartisan grassroots political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. The League is open to both women and men, and we invite you to join us. We never endorse or oppose political parties or candidates, but we do empower voters and defend democracy through education and advocacy. At the national, state, and local levels, we have more than 100 standing positions on a wide range of topics, and we use our positions to influence public policy through advocacy to our elected officials. Our positions vary widely, from climate change to housing, from waste management to voting rights, from agriculture to childcare. The League is also known for our work on empowering community members to become informed and engaged. We would love to have you join us. Simply go to our website, lwvcorvallis.org, and click on the Join tab at the top of the page. Or talk to our membership chair, Ann Schauber, who is here this evening. She's right at the back, waving her hand, standing up. So talk to...
Join.
Yes, that's right. We also encourage you to support the League, whether or not you're a member. And there are two ways of supporting the League with a financial contribution. You can either go to the website and click on the Donate tab, or you can participate in our annual Grapefruit fundraiser. And Charlyn Ellis is heading up this year's fundraiser. So please check with Charlyn for details and an order form. And Charlyn, do you want to stand up and let people know what they need to do?
I have our beautiful flyers. And if you have entered the 21st century, which I have not yet, there is a QR code that you can scan that will take you directly to the website to order for Grapefruit. And everybody who's a member of the League should be getting in the mail a paper order form as well. If you're still in the 20th century, as I am, you can order as well. I also need some people to put up flyers. So if you want to hang some flyers and tell me where you hung them so that I know we don't duplicate, catch me later.
Thank you, Charlyn. Appreciate it. Yes, you can go online to donate or to order Grapefruit. No?
Top left. Top left of our website is a
Top left of our website is a
shop the grapefruit sale.
all right, is Shop the Grapefruit sale. Thank you. So our local league has several active committees listed here, and any one of them would love to have you join. If you'd like to be involved with the league but aren't quite ready to join a committee, we also need volunteers for short-term commitments such as those that are listed here. So last April, the leadership of the League of Women Voters of the United States declared that our country is in a constitutional crisis. From the flagrant disregard for congressional authority and governmental checks and balances to defying Supreme Court orders. In response, they called for the League to lead a movement to engage and mobilize 8.5 million voters to protect and preserve our democracy. Now, that number, 8.5 million, constitutes 3.5% of the US population. And those who have studied such things historically has shown that it will take that many Americans to reverse the march toward authoritarianism. 8.5 million. Locally, our league has decided to sponsor a series of programs with the theme Restoring Democracy as a means of engaging and activating our community. Each of the program titles listed here will focus on threats to our democracy at the national level, but we'll also talk about what we can do here locally. We hope you'll keep the league bookmark that you've hopefully most of you found on your chair. Looks like this. And it lists all of our programs for the year. So hang on to this, and when you have your calendar handy, jot down the ones that you are interested in. We would love to have you. And somebody asked, where do we meet? Typically here at the library in this room, but for some, other programs and events will be at various other places. So we encourage you to get on our email list so you can keep track of where we're meeting and when. Okay, at this time, I'd like to ask our panelists to come forward and sit at the table because we're going to begin our program with 3 community members with varied backgrounds to speak briefly about their experiences related to democracy. And our first panelist, who is just to my left, to your right here, is Jimena Nava-Diaz, who has lived in Corvallis for the past 4 years. She is currently a student at Oregon State University studying public health and pre-medicine. Jimena serves as the OSU chapter president for SACNAS, the Society for the Advancement of Chicanos, Hispanics, and Native Americans in Science. As she explained to me, SACNAS is one of the very few places on campus where students of color in STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, can feel truly seen, valued, and uplifted, fostering both community and academic success. So welcome, Jimena. So is the microphone on there? So Jimena, do you want to go ahead and share first? What is your experience with democracy? And our panelists have been asked to each speak for 3 to 5 minutes.
Hi, everyone. So I get really nervous with public speaking, so I can prepare, and then I decided to write down what democracy means to me. So I will be reading off my iPad. When I think about democracy, the first word that comes to mind is power. In its purest form, democracy means power in the hands of people. But for me, as a first generation immigrant, I've also seen how that power can be uneven, how entire communities can be left out or even targeted. I'll be honest, it hasn't always felt fair watching policies under the Trump administration, seeing families torn apart by ICE, and knowing that people like my own family could be treated less than. It made me question what democracy really means when not everyone is equally protected. Those moments reminded me that democracy is fragile. It only works if we insist that it includes all of us, not just some of us. That's why that's why voting means so much to me. My first time voting, I felt the weight of history on my shoulders, not just my own story, but my parents' sacrifices and the struggles of so many people who came before us. Casting a ballot isn't just a duty, it's an act of resistance. It's me saying, we belong here, our voices matter, and we will not be silenced. Representation is also personal to me. As someone studying public health and preparing for a career in medicine, I see why every day how policy translates into real lives, whether it's access to healthcare, housing, or education. When elected officials don't represent us, those decisions hurt our communities first. That's why I believe democracy isn't just about elections, it's about holding leaders accountable to the people they serve. In my leadership with SACNAS, I've learned how powerful it is when people who are often unseen finally have a space to be heard and uplifted. To me, that's what democracy should look like. Not perfect, not easy, but a system where everyone, especially those historically excluded, have a seat at the table. So what does democracy mean to me? It means power, not the kind that divides or excludes. It means the power to vote, to speak, to show up, and to demand better. It means honoring where I come from while working toward a future where families like mine are not just surviving the system, but shaping it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimena. Thank you. Our next speaker is Larkin Holavari, who has lived in Corvallis for 29 years. Larkin received her degree in mechanical engineering from Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and she was co-owner of Soft Star Shoes for 17 years. Welcome, Larkin. Yeah.
So a couple things. First, I also am not a great public speaker. Secondly, that was amazing. Thank you. It's a really high bar. I don't know if I can meet that. And third is I'm battling a bit of a cough. So this is going to be kind of short because I don't want to start coughing.
Can you point the microphone straight out?
Can't
in
hear
front of
you.
Oh, is that better? Sorry.
Your mouth.
Okay.
Angry.
I'll try. Um, okay, so the question was asked, what does democracy mean to me? And when I thought about it, it's really about having agency and having a say in the community and the society that we live in. When I first moved to Oregon, I was really disappointed about vote by mail because at that time, I was really excited about going and standing in line, and it felt very patriotic. And so I was sad at losing that, what felt like patriotism. But over time, what I've come to realize is that that wasn't what being patriotic was. What it is really spending time with understanding the issues, the candidates, and making choices that represent where I want to live and who I want to represent me. And vote by mail, I feel like really gives me that opportunity. My husband and I like to sit down with a beer, go through our voters pamphlet and make choices, have discussions, look things up and decide who we're voting for and feel good about those decisions. The other thing that vote by mail gives is a lot of people the chance to participate because you don't have to, try to sneak in between soccer or school pickup and, soccer drop off to vote. You can kind of do it on your own schedule. And so that really allows more people the chance to participate, which is what I think democracy is about. It's about everybody being able to be there, have their voice being heard, and help to shape the community that we live in.
Thank you so much, Larkin. So our final panelist is Keely Creel, and Keely has worked and studied civil engineering since 2018. Her perspectives have been shaped by her education, childhood travel, and international living, and by her family. Welcome, Keely.
Thank you. I moved to Corvallis in 2019 for OSU and I graduated in 2023. And I worked in structural engineering after graduation until about this time last year. And at this time last year, I was not very politically motivated, at least not actively. I felt too busy between balancing family, home, work, and my body and friends. And almost exactly a year ago, I had a back injury dramatically redirect my energy. In the time since, my concern for politics and really all social well being grew a lot. My sister and I attended our first Indivisible meeting in March to engage with local issues on a regular basis. And we hosted gatherings, volunteered for protests, canvassing the farmers market. And what I've come to appreciate most from it all is human connection. My friends, my family, my neighbors, they are the most important humans in my life. They're the ones who are going to support and care for what I want and what I do. And I love and thoroughly fulfilled by supporting them in their endeavors as well. And democracy is one of the few systems that allows us all to see ourselves in the rules and structures we agree to participate in. Uh, thank you.
Thank you. Thanks to each of our panelists. You can stay there for just a minute. Let me see if this is going to work this time. Worked. Okay. So the League of Women Voters of Corvallis is committed not only educating our community about the issues that matter, but also building community. So I know we've got a room full of people here, but we want to encourage communication right here, right now, as part of this program. So we're going to take a few minutes to talk to each other. So please feel free. We'll probably take 5-7 minutes, something like that. Please feel free to get up and move around or stay right where you are and turn to those in front of you, in back of you, or next to you. But please use this time to talk to someone you have never met before. In fact, we'd like to challenge you to talk to at least one person you don't know in the next 5 minutes. So go ahead. All right. So I'd like to invite our panelists to return to their seats. If you guys want to. So I am curious, how many of you were able to meet the challenge of talking to at least one person you had never met before? Whoa, that's mighty good. We're helping to build community. Thank you. Appreciate that. So at this time, it is my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mary Folo. Dr. Folo is an instructor of political science within the School of Public Policy at Oregon State University. She received her PhD in political science from the University of Oregon, where she studied American politics and policy and wrote her dissertation on the effects of state preemption on local housing policy in Oregon. Please welcome Mary to the podium.
Hello. Oh, this. All right, can you hear me? Okay. All right. No, it's okay. I don't mind. All right, thank you for having me tonight, and thank you to the panelists. That was great. So I'm going to be talking to you all tonight about what democracy looks like kind of from an academic standpoint. So we're going to talk about what democracy looks like, what it should look like, and what it might look like going forward. All right, so what is democracy? Democracy is a system of rule in which political power is vested in the people. But we live in a representative democracy, not a direct democracy. So a representative democracy is a system of government in which the populace selects representatives who play a significant role in government decision-making. But what does democracy actually look like in practice? So there are quite a few different characteristics of democracy. We have respect for fundamental freedoms. We have freedom of expression, association, and opinion, access to power and its exercise in accordance with rule of law, the holding of free and fair elections, a pluralistic system of parties and organization, transparency and accountability in public administration, free and independent media, and then the one that we're going to focus on today is the separation of power. And separation of power is important because it ensures that many of these other characteristics can work. So our separation of powers is institutionalized through our three branches of government. And this is written into our Constitution from the very beginning in 1787, suggested by James Madison, written into the Federalist Papers. It really becomes our cornerstone of democracy in the US. So we have the executive, which is the president, the legislative, which is Congress, and the judiciary, which is the Supreme Court. And each is supposed to act independently of each other and be a check on power. So in theory, if the president gets too much power, the other two branches can kind of step in and redistribute that power in a more equitable way. So let's first look at each branch separately. So first we have the executive. This includes the president, the vice president, and the executive offices, including the cabinet. So while the president is the leader of the nation, he can't make decisions on his own. So he can't interpret or make laws. He can't decide how money will be spent, and he can't declare war. He can make treaties with the approval of the Senate, of course. He can enforce congressional laws, veto and sign bills, sign executive orders and grant pardons. He represents our country in discussions with other nations, leads the nation in times of war. He can make suggestions to Congress about laws. He can write the budget, but has to work with Congress to actually get these laws passed or rejected. And so the majority of these powers are granted in Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution. And at the start of our country, George Washington really sees the role of the president as a unifier, as somebody whose main role is to keep the country together and to execute the laws just as they're written. And we still often think of the role of the president as representing just the welfare of the nation. But as time has gone on, those Article 1, Section 2 powers have been interpreted in really vague ways, and we've seen executive power increase pretty significantly. One way this has happened that we think about pretty often is through the use of executive orders. So either to bypass congressional gridlock or to push the views of their party. Historically, we've seen this increase in executive orders, starting with Theodore Roosevelt. We see it kind of peak with FDR and drop back off, but we are seeing an increase in executive orders again. Okay, so the next branch is the legislative branch. The legislative branch is bicameral, meaning that it has two chambers. So the House is the lower body and the Senate is the upper, and they both have really important roles. So we have 100 senators, 2 from each state, and 435 House representatives, apportioned by the number of people in each district. The House is considered closer to the people, and they're elected on a 2-year term, while the Senate is considered closer to the federal government. They serve staggered 6-year terms, which means that every 2 years, 1/3 of the Senate is up for a vote. But they're equal partners. The legislation cannot be passed by one chamber alone, but the Senate does have a few more powers than the House, like ratifying treaties and approving presidential appointments. Congress has the sole power to declare war, to tax, to impeach elected officials, and they are allowed to make laws that are deemed necessary and proper to fulfill these roles. And so the necessary and proper clause is found in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, and it states that Congress has the authority to make laws that they deem necessary and proper. This is also known as the Elastic Clause, and it's been used in a variety of different ways throughout history, from creating the first national bank to the creation of the Clean Air Act. So this doesn't give them any new powers. It really just allows them to execute the powers that are already granted in the Constitution. And then finally, we have the judicial branch, or the Supreme Court. So their job is to interpret the laws and determine constitutionality. They also have the power to resolve disputes between the federal and state government, and to determine if actions of other branches are constitutional. Justices are referred by the president and appointed by the Senate, and they're granted lifetime appointments to make them immune to political and public pressures. When we think of the Supreme Court, we often think of them having 9 justices, but that's not actually written into the Constitution. Congress decides the number of justices, and it has historically been as low as 6. And so now that we know kind of what each branch is supposed to do, the question is, are they working as intended? Are they maintaining separation to protect democracy? So how do we know if democracy is working? Well, baseline for knowing if democracy is working is, first, transparency in the government. Remember, we're representative democracy, so we want to be kept in the loop. We also know it's working when we have free media, elections, and expression. And then the big one here is that are the three branches of government working independently of one another? It's clear they all work in the same space, but are they providing the necessary checks that they have to on the other branches? So the question becomes, is democracy at risk? So many would say we're at a tipping point for democracy based on how the three branches are interacting with each other. And many political scientists say that first because the court leans very conservative. We have three justices that were appointed by Trump and hold a conservative majority. And they've shown that they align more with presidential politics and policies than nonpartisan policies. Second, many members of Congress vote along party lines rather than policy lines, with some members of the Republican Party even stating that they're afraid of political retribution if they vote against Trump's policies. Finally, we've seen the executive branch expand at the expense of the other branches. And we know that if the president's impacting the other branches, the question becomes, are these legitimate presidential powers within the realm of the Constitution, or are they tactics employed by an authoritarian government? So when we think about authoritarianism, there are four real key indicators that we're kind of going in that direction. The first is the rejection or weak commitment to democratic rule. The second is denial of the legitimacy of political opponents. The third is toleration or encouragement of violence. And the fourth is readiness to curtail civil liberties of opponents, including the media. So we see these tensions with the media recently, specifically, and a lot of it has in response to the fact that the media is reporting on these increases in executive power in ways that would suggest that democracy is at risk. Okay, so when our three branches tend to collude rather than act as independent entities, we begin to run into these problems again that feel very authoritarian. And as you can see from these headlines, there's been executive behavior that is suggestive of authoritarianism. So for example, Trump has exerted control over independent agencies through executive orders, doing things like dismantling US aid, firing heads of agencies, and removing previous safeguards against corruption and election interference within the Justice Department. He shut down asylum laws, ignoring critical portions of laws passed by Congress, and his Office of Management and Budget has ordered a pause on various federal grants and loans to organizations he's deemed unworthy. Congress has been relatively silent, and while the lower courts have pushed back, the Supreme Court has not. In fact, the Supreme Court has allowed this overreach. They allowed his firing of Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. They allowed his withholding of foreign federal aid. And he has now asked them to rule on his executive orders ending birthright citizenship. Despite this, the Trump administration has argued that it's the judiciary, not the presidency, that is overreaching. So Trump has urged the Supreme Court even to limit the ability of federal judges to issue injunctions, blocking his administration actions nationwide. So what we're seeing on some level is collusion by the three branches of government, but it's not just what the government thinks that matters. It's also what the people think. Okay. Well, in July, a poll reported that 76% of Americans do believe democracy is at risk. However, studies show that only 3.5% of American voters would vote against their preferred candidate as punishment for undemocratic behavior. So it shows that not only is the government being less democratic, but that people are generally accepting of it. But what does this mean for democracy right now? So according to the Authoritarian Threat Index, we're at a 3.3 out of 5, which means we're under severe threat. And just last week, an Oxford historian predicted that the US has under 400 days left of democracy. So at this time period of risk, what can we do? Well, the Brookings Institute gives us 7 pillars to defend democracy. So we can protect elections, defend rule of law, fight corruption, reinforce civic and media space, protect pluralistic governance, counter disinformation, and then make democracy deliver. So how do we make democracy deliver? Voting is the #1 thing we can do, contacting elected officials, and even getting involved in local and state politics. So many times we think of the federal government as being the most important thing, the most important place for policies, but many laws and policies actually start as local democratic experiments. and then become more mainstream. Finally, you can exercise your civil rights and liberties. It is more important than ever to be committed to constitutional principles like freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, due process. These are things we need to protect, but we need to make a concentrated effort to do that if we want to protect democracy going forward. Thank you.
She'll take questions. We're ahead of ahead of schedule here.
Back.
What is due process?
Due process is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment, basically saying that every person is given like the ability to exist within the law. The government isn't going to come in and take away your civil liberties.
But the follow is that confined to US citizens.
That is the question. So the question was, is it confined to US citizens? Technically, yes.
Can you go back to those 7 pillars and maybe give a little detail on each one? Because they seem a little bit amorphous to me.
They're definitely amorphous. So protecting elections would really just be voting, making sure that other people are voting, kind of the basic one. Defending rule of law, I see that one as, making sure that you're keeping people accountable, especially in like if you see some kind of election interference, you would report it, that kind of thing. Fighting corruption kind of falls under that as well, making sure you're reporting. If you're reporting though to the federal government, that obviously, is a little circular. Reinforcing civic and media space. That's not something that all of us can necessarily do, but keeping the people who are in charge of the media accountable. Protecting a pluralistic governance. So making sure that we can have multiple parties, making sure we don't fall into like a one-party system. Countering disinformation. That might be the easiest one. If you hear it, say something. And then making democracy deliver would fall into, I guess these characteristics would fall into making democracy deliver.
When it comes to countering misinformation, what is a good way to talk to people that might be willing to listen?
That's a great question. When it comes to countering disinformation or misinformation, how could we talk to people to make them listen? That's a great question. Does anyone in the crowd have experience talking to people who maybe don't want to listen? I'm a professor, so they have to listen to me in class. In the back.
I encourage folks to check out Braver Angels. It's a group that encourages transpartisan conversations, and in particular, they have a workshop called something like Disagreeing Better. It's an hour and a half. Just gives you some real fundamental basic skills you might want to check out.
What's
And
the
you said that was
organization called again?
Braver
Angels.
Angels. Yeah, and they also, they're going to have a debate in Philomath on, they're going to have Braver. I don't think it's on. Yeah, the group is Braver Angels, and they're going to have a debate in Philomath on homelessness. So it'd be a way if you wanted to check out more about it, but it's a national organization. They do all kinds of workshops, how to talk with someone in your family who sees things differently, and they are trying to start up a chapter here. So I just share that as a resource.
And Anna Castley is running a number of workshops.
Yeah.
Posted around town that you might be interested in. There are posters of
Thursday,
Lynn
we start a
Benton.
new class on communicate for a change.
All right, were there other suggestions that people had for countering misinformation?
Which one?
In the community where I live, there's a weekly gathering of folks who just say that we are of unlike minds. This can happen in a family. This can happen in a neighborhood. This can happen with a select group of friends. The unfortunate part of it is we don't seem to have dissenting thinking in that group.
Okay, changing topics. I've long wondered, as I sit alone at home seething about what I see happening, if anyone else here sort of feels the same way I do, which is that the most dangerous thing was the stacking of the Supreme Court, because if that was not happening, he could not be getting all these things through, the evil one, as I call him. Does anybody else feel that the single biggest downfall that we have is what's going on in the Supreme Court?
Absolutely.
Because they overturn everything, what judges try to do.
Yeah, so what should be a check on the executive power definitely is not working right now. Yeah.
Okay, I've given talks on why people believe what they believe and how to change beliefs. And probably the best approach to talk to someone is to ask them questions and listen and respond to their answers, because they want to be heard, and you can't really tell them something that they don't want to hear. But if you ask the questions, they're going to start opening up.
Yeah, that's great. And when I teach and I have a lot of students of very different opinions, I try to focus on, what do we have in common? If there's even one little thing, then we can kind of move forward from that, even if we are very different about everything we think.
As far as whether the Supreme Court is more important or whatever, I would say that I think that the fundamental difference from the past is that the parties now are more powerful than the institutions. So the Republican Party is basically owned by Donald Trump. If the Supreme Court falls in line, his Congress falls in line. And so there's no checks and balances because the party is more important. And also because all issues are now national rather than local. And if we want to engage other people, I think it's good to maybe start at a local level.
Yeah, and that's a great point. So it's really interesting to think about. We actually see our first parties in an election in the second election ever in the US. And so we've kind of always had parties, but polarization is increasing. And so what we're seeing is the parties are becoming more powerful. And this is definitely impacting the way our politics work. Whereas before we kind of thought of gridlock as a good thing. Now we're thinking of it as, want to get past it.
One more question, and it needs to be a question. Please.
I've heard a number of different modifiers added to democracy, things like social democracy or socialist democracy. Can you explain what those are?
I can try. So a social democracy or socialist democracy would be, so democracy we know is, power by the people. We're in a representative democracy, so we elect people and they kind of make decisions for us. A social democracy would, again, be just closer to that, a direct democracy where it's the people themselves making the decisions instead of like a, main figurehead.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
All right. So now it's your turn. I mean, some of you have during that Q&A part had a chance to express yourselves, but now we want to give everybody a chance to talk. And so we have a few questions to get you started. I don't know if this thing's working or not. All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and ask the questions. Okay, so these are just some discussion questions to, kind of get you started. What stood out for you from what you've heard so far? What is your experience of democracy? How have you seen democracy change over time? What concerns you most right now about our democracy? And then what can I do what can we do together? Now, obviously, you won't be able to cover all of these questions, but you can start with the one that appeals to you most. And we also have some guidelines that we'd like you to follow during your discussion, because what we're going to do, and there are spaces around here, we're going to break up into small groups. Can you advance to the next slide, please? So, discussion guidelines. Listen to understand and make sure everyone in your small group has a chance to talk. Secondly, show respect by suspending judgment. This is a time for sharing, not for disagreeing or trying to convince others of your point of view, which usually doesn't work anyway. Like Dave was saying, listening and asking questions is really important. Focus the discussion on issues, not on personalities, which is a little bit hard to do these days. So we're going to go to the next slide, which is just the discussion questions again. And when I give the signal, I'm going to ask you to move your chairs around. Please turn to the people that are basically around you, but there are spaces in the room where you can just turn your chairs around. Or feel free to stay right where you are, and maybe people can come and gather around you. But your group should have at least 3 people in it to respond to one or more of the questions. So, and we have more to do, including a call to action and some ideas for you when we come back. So please hang in there with us. Lisa?
How many people are here? Is there an upper size range of group that you would suggest?
Well, because we're probably going to be spending maybe, well, once we get settled, you know, and arranged, maybe 15 minutes or so. So you want to have it small enough that everybody has a chance to talk. So probably not more than 6 people.
There's 118 people in the room.
Okay. All right. Well, go ahead and start arranging yourselves however you can.